Hello everybody and welcome back to Borderlands 3. My name is Mikey Dubs and we are trying to get our flak to be an ultimate destroyer of worlds. We're getting past that initial baseline of gear, just getting one copy of everything and moving more into looking for better gear, looking for better rerolls, better anointments and all of that stuff. Today is going to be a pretty fun day where I'll show you guys how I go about farming the maximum amount of Eridium. So right now I have about 2,000 Eridium. I've done a few runs of what I'm about to show you so I could really fine tune it and make sure it's perfect for you guys. We're going to be gathering a ton of Eridium in this video, and we're going to be doing it by smashing rocks. So I'm going to show you a run, and then I'm going to teach you everything that's behind it that's really making it tick. So what we're going to do is we're here in the Voracious Canopy on Eden 6, and if I zoom out, we're by this dead scrap trap unit right next to this ammo dump machine, which is right here in that back corner. No trespassers, ain't no backing in the deadly wildlife section. And if you go to this cave, it's something that I put in my maximum efficiency flat guide, you're gonna find a whole bunch of Eridium piles down here, both visible and invisible, right? Let's go ahead and find one of these invisible ones. There's another invisible one here. You can only melee them if you get the actual indicator. There it is. We pick up all that Eridium. Be one right here. 2, 3. Should be one here. And then 5. So there's 9 total piles. 4 on that little ledge and 5 down here. As you can see, we got almost 400 Eridium from one run. We're at 2,500 now. So we get a ton of Eridium from this, and you have to kind of actually do a lot of setup to get this working, okay? So the idea behind this farm is that when you smash the piles of Eridium, if you can get different kinds of damage sources besides just melee, you actually increase the amount of Eridium per pile. And the best way to do that is with elements. So we actually have a ton of different elements going into our melee strikes when we do this properly. So the first element that we're going to be getting is the Revolter. So on action skill start, trigger any effects that happen on shield break or fill. So when we trigger our action skill, our melee strikes now get electric applied to them. So when we melee the piles, not only are we doing a melee hit, but we're also doing an electric hit. Okay, so that's going to give us more Eridium. So electric shock, right? That's taken care of. Number 2 is we have our cryo stone relic here. This will give us cryo. So we have shock and cryo on our melees. That's 2 elements taken care of. But the deathless on this, and you can also do this with like a lucky dice relic by decreasing your maximum HP. But the deathless portion of this puts her health to, if you look at her health in the bottom left corner, puts her health to 1. Right? So that deathless part is really important because if we run a primary weapon with URAD, right? While under 50% health, you gain 100% bonus radiation damage. If you run URAD, your melees will also get radiation. So we're getting shock from Revolter, cryo from deathless, radiation from primary weapon, and don't stop there. What about our grenade? We have a fish slap here with 50% bonus corrosive damage after your action skill is over. So that's why I'm spamming my action skill. Make sure the racks all fall and die, right? The racks are all dead. Now I start meleeing. When I do that, I'll have corrosive, shock, cryo, and radiation. 4 elements. We're missing fire. That's all we're missing. So you can get 4 elements, and if you were playing Amara, you could have your primary weapon be a fire weapon, and you can get all the elements. But on Flak, you cannot. So that's going to be the basic, the basic setup. You don't need a whole lot of different kind of skills to get here. The only thing I'd recommend is having like a snowdrift or something to get to the spot on the map quickly. This is a pretty close by spot. We'll do another run, show you guys, and this is how we're going to be gathering our Eridium. And one thing I would recommend actually that I put on here that I want to take off is extra racks. I'm going to take off extra racks and just have on cooldown, right? We don't need anything else for our racks. And we have on the jabber for movement speed. When you spawn in, you're going to look at your mini map and you're going to see, you're going to head straight towards this cave. And what I like to do is right as I'm entering the cave, throw my racks into the ground somewhere, right? Now I got that action skill and bonuses of radiation. Oh, I'm sorry, action skill and bonuses of corrosion. We also got the shock from the Revolter. And we're going to go ahead and smash all these piles while activating our action skill in between. We're looking for 5 total. There's 1 in this corner if it doesn't spawn. There's 3 right here packed in this tight little corner. Right, 1, 2, 3. And then there's 2 out in the middle here. There we go. So from that run, I got 264 Eridium. That means in 2 runs, you can basically get a Titan spawn or Titan amount of Eridium like you would from the slaughterhouse without ever having to actually go to the slaughterhouse, without having to go to the slaughter shaft and fight Titan and do any of that. You can very quickly gather Eridium this way. Every single run is another reroll, essentially. 250 Eridium for a reroll doesn't bother me because I am getting tons of Eridium. So you go right here. Look how there's no rocks in this pile. They're there. You just gotta find them. You're gonna be in about the same place every time. If you don't find them in time, just go ahead and crack your action skill again. There it is. And you get better at learning where they are as you go. As I've been a little bit rusty since I haven't done Eridium farming in a long time. Only one of them spawned down here, but we know where they are. One here. One here. One here. Don't even have to move. Let's wait for our action skill again so that we can guarantee the most amount of Eridium possible. Then 2 out in the middle of the open here. There we go. So there's 320. So we're getting, you know, around that 250 mark every single time by getting 4 different elements onto our melee strike. It really makes this Eridium farming go by a lot faster than it usually would, you know, having to farm Titan, going through Joey Ultraviolet's mansion. Why do all that stuff when you can simply just run here and do it this way? And Amara's going to be probably the best at it because she can take her primary weapon and make her action skill that. I'm not sure if she can turn her melees into different elements or not. I'm assuming she can, which would make her the best at this. Mo's with the big surplus fire skill, you would think would be pretty good, except for you don't have a real way to kill Iron Cub. You can jump in and out of Iron Bear to get that big surplus. But this is going to be one of your best ways to go ahead and farm Eridium. Now, if you don't have all this perfect gear, right? If you don't have a stone deathless relic, which is something that, you know, I really recommend grabbing. If you don't have a stone deathless relic, you can rock something like a front loader shield. So the front loader is going to reserve some of your health, and you can run that with a URAD anointment as well. But since we have a deathless, we don't need the front loader at all. We can instead go for the revolter.
Let's hunt.
Now you can use any shield for this. You can get any shield with an on action skill end elemental anoint, just like this one. On action skill end, gain 50% bonus corrosive damage. If you can get any shield with that, you can make it work here, as long as you wait for your action skill to end before meleeing your targets. It's all that really matters. 4 piles, easy to spot. We're at 3,400 already. Feeling good, looking good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. 9 total piles, 3,500 Eridium, and we continue on. When you're playing Borderlands 3 endgame, you do have to take time away from your normal activities to do stuff like this, because when you get new weapons and you want to anoint those weapons with the proper anointments, with stuff that's really powerful, it takes a lot of Eridium to do so. So you're gonna want to be doing. You're going to want to have a really fast way to farm Eridium in your backpack, just ready to equip at a moment's notice. And I found this URAD gun from a vendor. I went to Sanctuary and rerolled the gun vendor until I found this URAD gun. Ideally, you probably want an EMP5 because it gives you more movement speed to get this done faster. So a UMP5 with URAD is probably the most optimal. But realistically, you don't need it. You're not traveling very far. You're spending most of your time standing still. Look at that. 3794, almost 3,800 in just a few runs. We've only been at it for a few minutes now, and most of that was explaining to you how the build works. Now we're going to be going into actually just farming the gear for the next little while. I have a lunch date with my wife coming up in a few minutes, so I might have to pause the video here, but getting an Eridium session out of the way is just a really big thing. Especially if you're not rocking mods that decrease or remove the Eridium price from rerolling at the anointment reroller. Where is this bad boy? There it is. Since we took too much time, I'm going to send another rack down.
This is impenetrable.
And while we're doing, we down send another rack. All 5 piles are right here. Beautiful. You're going to smash these bad boys. You get a bunch of iridium. The next best way to farm iridium is got to be the slaughter shaft. I think if you have Moe's or some other AFK method to farm the slaughter shaft, you can do it actually pretty stress-free. So Moe's, if you run a Rocketeer and you sit in Daka Bear, you can get Iron Bear to wipe the slaughter shaft for you. The only thing you have to be paying attention to is on round 5, making sure that right after Titan dies, you end the round. Otherwise, you could accidentally let Iron Bear, finish the round without, or accidentally finish the entire 5th round after killing Titan. But other than that, you can use that method because Titan drops you 500 Iridium every time he dies. That's a good way to farm not only Iridium, but also like, Vault Card, XP, and all those other goodies, right? For this kind of farm, this is just for Iridium, but it's also very fast for Iridium. You can get yourself up to 20k just by, it seems monotonous and it seems tedious and it seems like, oh, I hate doing this. And it does take away from the actual shooting portion of the game and the looting portion of the game. What it does do is it gives you appreciation for getting that perfect anoint on your weapons. Like, I spent the hard-earned Iridium that it takes, to get anointments like fadeaway active damage on your ×8 corrosive monarch, right? Or to get the right anointment on your King's Call or Queen's Call fadeaway active. And this is how you do it, is you gotta earn the Iridium. Now, you can install mods, but that's going to take away from that. Installing anything beyond vanilla is going to take away from your experience. And that is just the fact of reality you're going to have to face eventually if you're going to be using mods to make endgame easier. Rolling anointments is supposed to be difficult. Remember back in the day in Borderlands 3 where you couldn't actually reroll anointments. Anointments were actually like, the most sought after thing when farming. You didn't even worry about the parts of whatever flipper you got. You really were just worried about whether or not your flipper had consecutive hits on it. Nowadays, people like to install mods, and I've installed mods and re-rolled myself. But whenever I do that, I feel like my save is somehow, it's tainted. My save is not like worth it anymore. I don't feel that same rush of fun that I get when I did it from vanilla, which is, I think is understandable, right? It's an understandable perspective. It's, downloading the mod to help you in the end game is a form of cheating, but it's like a form of cheating that is not cheating if it's accepted by you and by others, because it's a single player game, and I totally get that. But I can't feel good about re-rolling my Eridium when it only cost me, say 50, right? So the Killer 6, the Killer 6 recommendation, because he's played probably more Borderlands 3 than almost anyone on the planet, is to just set your Eridium cost to 50. Otherwise, you're here Eridium farming all the time. And you know what? I totally get that, especially if you're someone who, on his channel, he's running new characters all the time. He's running new character, different allegiance, different challenge, different playthrough, different weapon types, assault rifles on flak or submachine guns on Moe's. And for that, doing Eridium farming just to get the right anointments is gotta be misery. But for someone like me, who I only have one Moe's character, I have one flak character. Once I get that anointment on that piece of gear, it's never going away. So my Eridium kind of, if you're someone who likes to play the game like me, where I don't have a whole bunch of side characters, but instead have maybe one of each Vault Hunter, and I like to fill out that Vault Hunter with one backpack that has multiple different styles of builds. So like on this flak, I've got Spellcaster. On this flak, I've got gun builds. I've got melee builds. I've got company man builds that I'm trying to complete right now from all different manufacturers. My Jacobs is pretty much done, right? Not pretty much done, because my Roland's Call still is in corrosive, which is something that I'm going after, because I'm always chasing something. But I've got my Vladov company man build nearing completion. I have my Jacobs company man build nearing completion. But I want my Hyperion to go off. I want my Dahl, my COV, my Torg, my Tedior. And I've got some weapons picked out for that. But without the Eridium to go along with it, I might be stuck in the eternal loop of, just having enough Eridium from my current farm to get a couple rerolls, and then being miserable when I don't have enough Eridium. And I have to come back here, do it. So let's just do it in one foul swoop and get as much Eridium as we can in this video before we continue on. We're already at 5,399, which is a good amount. I would like to get 10,000 by the end of the video, maybe 20. Get as much as you can. And then I might do later on a a AFK farm style Iridium video with Moes to show how you can gather Iridium on Moes really, really efficiently. I think you could do probably something similar on Zane with the clone, although Moes is probably a lot safer. Wait for the action skill to end. You. Because Moes, you literally don't have to do very much. As long as you got a Rocketeer with like action skill damage, at least that's, from my testing, that's all you need to completely dominate the Slaughter Shaft without having to actually fire a single bullet at anyone. Okay. Go, 5,700. Now, if you're on console, what you can do is you can, instead of save quitting, you can change your Mayhem back from 10 to 11, 11 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 10. The Eridium gains will be the same. You can do that. But I'm on PC. I've got fairly quick load times, so why wouldn't I just do a save quit? Beautiful. Okay. No rocks spawned up here, which means we're gonna have to find them. 1, 2. Toss an action skill out. Where are you? I saw you immediately. It can be hard to find. You gotta find those little indicators of where you should be meleeing. And then we got 3 rocks down here, which means it's just these 2 in the corners. Need to be meleeed. There we go. Okay, almost up to 6,000. That's good. Love that. I've been thinking about how I want to progress the series, and something that I was this close to going with my Vladov Company Man build to farm more Tizzies, because I want a ×3 corrosive Tizzy. Right now I have a ×2 corrosive Tizzy, and I re-rolled the anointment for consecutive hits, which is nice. But I want that ×3, and so I want the Eridium to re-roll it when I do get the ×3. I also want to be able to have the Eridium to re-roll my no pew pew when I get that. So definitely. And then Hyperion, I want the ability to re-roll my Hyperion weapons. Like all the weapons that I'm getting, I want to be able to re-roll. So that's big for me.
Distract them.
I want my boss shredders to have fade away active, and I want my non-boss shredders to have, you know, action skill and splash damage, or action skill and weapon damage, something like that. That's what I'm really into. Would I re-roll consecutive hits if I get it? Probably not. Here we go. 6,000 already. I mean, you would be shocked how fast you can farm up Eridium if you really put your mind to it. If you have the right build. Farming Eridium is a lot like farming anything else. You gotta have the right build. You gotta have the right strategy. And if you actually put some time into it, just do 1 hour. No, just one. If you really like Borderlands 3, right? And you want to give your character that overall strength, you gotta come to the Voracious Canopy, or you gotta go to the Slaughter Shaft. You gotta do something to get yourself some Eridium. An underrated part about farming the Slaughter Shaft that I haven't mentioned yet. Did this already break? I think it's here, right there. About farming the Slaughter Shaft is that as you get XP from the Slaughter Shaft, you're also getting Vault Card XP. And sometimes Vault Cards can give you Eridium from their rewards, 500 Eridium. So that's something that you can do as well if you want to do more of a combat focused, is just farm up your Vault Cards at the Slaughter Shaft and get your Eridium that way. But for me right now, I mean, I have a decent time, I don't mind just racking up the Eridium gains from here. That way when I need Eridium, you know, if I want to go company man farming, for instance, 500 Eridium bait to get into the arena. And then say, you know, I want to go farm the company man, but then my attention gets pulled away, right? I have to go somewhere else. In that case, I have to, you know, come back at a different time. You know, if I'm farming Eridium and then, you know, my wife says, hey, do you want to go to the store or something like that, right? And I don't want to leave my computer running or whatever it may be. I got to close the game down, and then I have to pay that 500 Eridium to get back in. Like, this is just something, you got to pay Eridium to play endgame. Just stock up on it from the Voracious Canopy. It's a really good way to do it. Really, really good way to do it. Every once in a while, you are going to need to come back here and farm some Eridium, which isn't the worst deal in the world, especially when you know exactly, you know, what your strategy is going to be while doing it. You can also have fun with your friends. Like if you have friends playing Borderlands, and I know a lot of times the game is a little bit older now, there's not as many active players, but you can always go to the slaughter shaft with your friends and farm Eridium that way, right? I believe there's a whole bunch of methods that people, if you go on Reddit, and there was recently a post on Reddit with people talking about like the most effective methods, and the one way that came up for them, a couple different people, was to talk to Maurice, then go to the slaughter shaft to get your 30 decoder rings from the cartels event, and then get your 500 Eridium from Titan that way, and then you should have, by that time you should have 30 decoder rings finished. Then you can go into Joey Ultraviolet's mansion and get all the Eridium there as well. That seems like a pretty fun PvP focused way to gather a lot of Eridium. Probably pretty fast as well. Is it going to be faster than this? I doubt it. And I personally would rather just do this non-combat, gather some Eridium up this way. And that's what I'm feeling. Now, the future of our flak, primarily what we're looking for is, again, our company men gun damage strats. Just toss another one out. Our company man gun damage strats, I want to fill it out with all the different manufacturers. I would also like to get some sort of pet build going, like a Red Fang or some sort of pet build where I can do stuff like the slaughter shaft without having to think about it too much, without having to run around with a gun build meant for raiding and stuff like that. I can instead maybe get a pet build up and running that can do the slaughter shaft for me. And I just kind of hide in the corner somewhere. I don't know. It's a pipe dream.
Let's see what you hide.
Where are you? Right there. And I think the last one's right there. Action skill into the corner. There we go. Up to 7,500. So this isn't so bad for me personally. A swig of water. Now, if you made it to this point in the video, I'm trying to think about what kinds of activities to do in Borderlands 3 with my flak. And I was thinking about doing something where I call it like a planetary rush, or at least like a planetary scout, where I choose a planet, Pandora, Eden 6, Xylurgos, Necrotafeo. I choose a planet, and I go through that planet, originally like the first time, and try to not only do a full sweep of the planet, right, destroying all the named enemies and all that stuff, but also figuring out which maps I like best for doing run testing, build testing, or just going out there and having a fun shooting experience. There are definitely some areas that I think are really fun, some areas that are a little bit less fun, and I want to kind of make a list, a chart of what kinds of areas I want to go to have some fun with builds, and what kind of areas I want to be avoiding. But I want to, the number one thing I want to do is increase the amount of areas that I go to have fun with the characters that I build. So as of right now, the real options for going out and testing out a build or trying out a new build just for the sake of trying it out is Athenas, the takedowns, slaughters, trials, right? All of these, and the anvil on Eden 6. Like, those are my spots. I would like to go into the basic maps and find more spots that aren't necessarily, you know, a built-in raid, a built-in trial, just a kind of a natural Borderlands style clear the whole map. And that's going to be a little bit like what I think we're seeing in Borderlands 4. We got 4 mega zones, right? 4 mega zones, and I think what's going to end up being a pretty decent way to farm it is just to get in there and just start clearing. And I think that's something that they're trying to go for a long time now, is especially when they have a lot of the gear tied to world drops. I think what they're going for is they really want us to get out and just take on the world. You know, just instead of going for dedicated drops. And it's a wonder why dedicated drops haven't been in the game since launch. Or at least, you know, Wonderlands didn't have the best dedicated drops. I believe we struggled with dedicated drops in Wonderlands, but the pre-sequel definitely didn't have a lot of dedicated drops. Borderlands 3 didn't have a ton of dedicated drops on launch. They went back in later and added a bunch of dedicated drops to the pools of already named enemies, or even rare enemies that they made non-rares, so they spawn every time so you can actually loot them. But there's an argument about dedicated drops that doesn't really come up a lot, but it does stand to reason why sometimes Gearbox doesn't want us to have dedicated drops. And in a world where everyone is playing their own game and no one is communicating with each other online or on YouTube or all that about what drops from who where, and like loot limit doesn't exist, then I think that dedicated drops should be the one of the only ways to acquire loot. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where YouTube, Reddit, everyone is trying to be the person who tells you where stuff is, right? And that's for good reason. It's a giant exploratory type game with lots of hidden secrets. The first thing that's going to happen when the game launches is you're going to see a lot of the bigger channels posting their legendary encyclopedias, you know, their lootpedias, and talking about where to get each weapon and what each weapon does and all this stuff that comes out right away. And if you are someone who likes to play Borderlands and would like to immerse yourself into the content of Borderlands, well, a lot of what you're getting is spoiler heavy. I mean, it is a very large adventure exploratory game. It's impossible almost to absorb content of it without getting majorly spoiled, especially with dedicated drops. So I understand where the devs are coming from, where if everything is dedicated drops, then it somewhat trivializes a lot of the end game. Because if you can know exactly where and how to get a certain piece of gear, then you don't have to interact with the world all that much. Like the biggest example of this I can tell you from Borderlands 3 is the hail and the crit, the Moxie weapons aboard Sanctuary 3. Oh, it sounds like my cat is up on the counter. I will be right back. Okay, she wasn't on the counter. She was actually jumping up to the windowsill where she was supposed to be. Unfortunately, we missed the recycling day for collated recycling, which is like your glass and your bottles and stuff like that. So we have two bi-weekly, like we have, let's just say that we have a buildup of some recycling. So when she's jumping up to her windowsill, she accidentally bumped into that, which is fine. She's doing great work, but she looked like when I got there, she was looking at me like, hey, am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. I understand that the hail and the crit aren't exactly dedicated drops, but they serve the same purpose where we know exactly where to go. Where is this? There it is. You know exactly where to go get it, and you don't have to spend that much time in the end game realistically in order to get super powerful. Right, world drops, what world drops do is world drops keep up the suspense that every legendary that drops in the ground could be good, could be powerful. And that's always the case. But dedicated drops kind of, I missed you, little friend. They make the game a lot easier. Strip them bare. But being able to go out into the world in a spot that you know where a certain piece of gear is to get that one specific piece of gear, that is like the core of what makes the end game tick. So you can't really get rid of dedicated drops, but at the same time, if a certain weapon is too easy to obtain, then it kind of ruins the rarity, the value of that weapon. Like a big example of this I can give you is the flipper. The flipper, from my understanding, is an S tier weapon on at least Moe's Probably on flak, even though I haven't really used it much on flak for the main reason that I used it so much on Mo's. And this is part of that is because of how unvaluable the gun has become because of how easy it is to obtain. But the flipper has like a 33% drop chance or something, like 30% drop chance. It drops so frequently from a pretty medium difficulty enemy. It's a really easy fight, and it makes the flipper, yeah, it's easy to obtain. You can get that a ton of power, but there's so much power behind that flipper. Why is it a 30% drop chance? You know, this comes down to balance. Was the flipper really expected to be the best weapon in the game when it, at least from what I was using when it was dropped? Probably not, but it's impossible to know that fact. I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but I think this is an important discussion to have, is what dedicated drops. I think the community has come to consensus that the more dedicated drops are in the game, the better. I just wanted to bring up, well, there's another side to that, which is the feeling of accomplishment that you get for getting a piece of rare loot goes away pretty substantially, in my opinion, when you find the dedicated drop source for it. Especially when the dedicated drop source has a really high chance to drop it. Right? If it's something like a True Trial or the Slaughter Star 3000, right? Or something like that that is very difficult, then I think it's okay, you know, put the flipper behind that, put the Monarch behind that, put the Rowan's Call behind that. But to put the flipper behind a 30% drop chance at a pretty mediocre enemy is insane to me. The same thing for stuff like the Light Show. There are so many legendaries in this game that aren't that great, that are harder to obtain than the Light Show, than the flipper.
I have need of you, beast.
I think ideally what you're looking for from dedicated drops is a balanced dedicated drop system where the easier weapons to obtain are weaker than the harder weapons to obtain. Now, this is something that Gearbox has never been able to quite get right because, well, in Borderlands 2, we had a lot of mission rewards become the best weapons in the game. I'm looking at you, Pimper, now. I'm looking at you, Sandhawk. I'm looking at you, Orphan Maker. I'm looking at you, Grog Nozzle. I'm looking at you, Lady Fist. So that's just something to think about, is how much do we want dedicated drops, and how much do we want the dedicated drops of certain enemies to be powerful or not so powerful. I personally I like a situation where the easier drops are not that great. I think it's called the proprietary license or something like that. It's an SMG that drops from the very early game on Pandora in Borderlands 3. You get it from like exploring the droughts a little bit. And it's not a very good weapon, but that makes sense because it's a super early game area against, you know, a pretty mediocre enemy. That makes sense to me. Something like the Kings and Queens calls being locked behind Tyrene, that makes a ton of sense to me. It doesn't make sense stuff like the Light Show, stuff like the flipper. I can try to think of another, like a super easy. I think double penetrating uncapped herald in Borderlands 2 is an example of a weapon that's too easy to obtain. How powerful it is, right? Savagely, 10% drop chance.
Let's see what you hide. Too hard to crack.
I would like to see dedicated drops, but I don't want to see dedicated drops go too far in one way where all of a sudden the game just becomes like, oh, you want the most powerful guns in the game? All you have to do is take this one little side journey at max rank to this one specific enemy that's really easy to kill. But we gotta put all the weapons on somebody, and they can't go not all the weapons. This might sound crazy, but not every weapon can get put into the pool of the biggest enemies. Right? People complain all the time about, oh, this raid or this boss, their loot pool is too congested. Their loot pool is too diluted. There's too much going on. I'm not going to get the weapon I want from this enemy. Well, at the same time, we don't want... I personally don't want powerful weapons locked behind trivial enemies. So what's the balance there? And I think the Gearbox is kind of going in a good direction, which is less legendaries. They said that there's going to be less legendaries in Borderlands 4, which is a big step in the right direction. That allows you to balance out what the drop sources of those legendaries are, and hopefully they make less bad legendaries. I think that these problems all start from the same origin, and that origin is they made a lot of bad legendaries in this game. A lot of bad legendaries. And those bad legendaries have to go into someone's loot pool. What that ends up doing is that it takes the good legendaries, the ones that are actually sought after, and puts them behind mediocre, not challenging, not interesting characters within the world.
I believe I can break this now. Formidable obstacle.
I think if you're gonna put legendary loot, very powerful legendary loot, behind these kind of boring world boss type enemies, then the percent chance at that drop needs to be very low. Very low. You can fight the big baddies for the better drop chances and the small baddies for the bad drop chances. And I don't know what the chances were in Borderlands 2. I think it's 5%. It might be 10%. Whatever it is, stay that low. Only for the biggest, most powerful weapons. If it's that junk legendary stuff that we see in this game all the time, and I don't really care, you know. But for the big baddies, I think it's important to have a conversation about what dedicated drops mean for your overall experience. You know, I get wanting to have that dedicated source, that one source that you don't have to feel like I'm playing inefficiently and this isn't the way I want to be playing the game. This is getting boring and repetition. Like, you don't want to end up in a situation like Wonderlands, where the best way to farm gear is also the best way to test gear, and that's just to run the chaos chambers into the bunnies. You don't want to end up in a situation like that. But you don't want to end up in a situation where the best guns in the game are 30% drop odds from mediocre enemies. Somewhere in between there. And it's I think they're making a lot of smart decisions. I think they're bringing down the amount of legendaries. I think they're bringing down the drop rates. We can only hope that they assign loot pools in a way where the most powerful weapons are in the most difficult loot pools.
Let's see what you hide. Seems unbreakable.
You know, that's the hope for the future, and whether or not they can actually pull that off is going to be challenging, because one thing we know that Gearbox struggles with is balancing. Balancing is not a critical element to the game, right? This is a PvE solo player game a lot of the time. Balancing is not a super critical component when it comes to guns and stuff like that, right? It's definitely one of the things they tackle last. From all the time I'm playing this game, balance is one of the things they tackle last, because my theory is that they know. Why would 2K and Gearbox pay quality assurance personnel
To me.
anything when balance related,
Attack.
when they could just do their best with balancing on launch, you know, try their best to make things relatively balanced based on fire rate, projectile count, base damage numbers, right? You take those three things, try to make the game as balanced as possible, but then let the player base be the testers. Let the player base show you what the most powerful items are, and then you can buff and nerf from there. Gearbox doesn't really balance the game on launch all that much. It doesn't seem like they might do a lot of balancing, but the game is always out of whack balanced. Hi, Lily. You want to come on the camera? I was letting people know that you were being good. Hi. Say hi. You're done. You're over it. You just want regular attention. You don't want to be picked up. She's crawling. She's. That is not me on my keyboard. That is her. Good girl, though. Enjoy your time. Would you like me to make an opening for you? Here, give me 1 second. Okay, I returned. There was a... When she jumps on this desk, she likes to go to a windowsill that's to that direction right in front of me. But there was a plant blocking her and a curtain, so I kind of just cleared the way for her a little bit so she can be over there. She's doing great. So... I wanted to talk about dedicated drops a little bit. I know I kind of work myself up. When you're farming Eridium and you're talking about Borderlands, sometimes you just kind of get into the groove of it, right? We're at 40 minutes. I wanted to farm for an hour to see how far I could get. So let's do that. Let's get 20 minutes more in here, and then we can go in the next episode and do something a little bit more, you know, gun focused. But this is to show you guys you can actually farm Eridium pretty quickly, especially if you're not doing too much. And let's say you're watching NBA playoffs like I am, you can just bring up the... You can just bring up this Voracious Canopy map. And again, this one more time, we'll break it down. We're trying to add as many elements to our melee strikes as possible in order to get the most amount of Eridium. That's the secret. That's the secret juice. We can do that in many different ways. Revolter gives you shock. Cryostone gives you cryo. The Deathless enables the URAD from our anointment on our primary weapon. And our Fish Slap is our fourth with corrosive. You don't want to be overlapping. You don't want to get cryo here because we already have cryo here. We don't want to get a shock stone because we already have a revolter. We don't want to get a radiation stone because we already have URAD. This should all be making sense as far as applying multiple elements. If you're playing Amara, I believe you can change the element of your melee to whatever you want. So you can get 5 elements. So if you have an Amara and you want a character to farm up Eridium on, it's definitely her. It's definitely her. But I'm showing you with Flak, you can get 4 elements. With Moze, you can get, I believe, 5 elements you can get with Moze. With Moze, you can put... Yeah, I think with Moze, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Because with Moze, you can put your health below half without needing a Deathless or without needing a shield with her orange skill tree. You can get big surplus for fire damage as long as your action skill is cooling down on your melee strikes. You can get a stone relic. You can get URAD. A 5. I think you can get all 5. Yeah, you can get all 5 with Moze as well. Probably not as easy to do with Moze as Amara, but I think with Moze, because of big surplus in the purple tree, the first middle skill in the purple tree, that when your action skill is cooling down, you get bonus fire damage on everything. So as long as you're not rocking like a fire stone or action skill and bonus fire damage and overlapping that fire, and instead spread out all of your elements across all of your anointments and all of your pieces of gear, well then you can do this with Moze with 5 elements, I think. That's making sense to me. I mean, I hope that makes sense to you guys. Go. Just keep activating your action skill to make sure that it's ending. That's what's going to keep up all of your elements. There we go. 12,808. 12,821. Not bad. So my ideal world, and here's a... This is a conversation that you guys might be having with yourselves from time to time as well. And I don't know where I fall on this, but there's a big part of me that wants to play the new Borderlands. I talked about this in one of my recent videos that I want to play the new Borderlands without any assistance from the online community. Right? In Borderlands 3, I played on launch and I watched everything. Everything. I was watching every best builds video. I was watching every encyclopedia video. I was watching every last bit of content because I was immersed in the world. I mean, my old roommate would tell you, he would tell you, at any moment in time, I know exactly what Mikey's doing. He's either playing Borderlands or he is watching NBA basketball. You know, like basketball and Wizards, or Wizards basketball and Borderlands.
Back, little friend.
Sure. I was immersed in it. can I play? Would I be able? Would it even be? Let's start with that. Would it even be possible to play Borderlands 4 without assistance from the online community? It would be tough. You know, I would want to know where everything is. I would want to know what the most powerful options are for each Vault Hunter and all that. At the same time, I think I would enjoy the experience a lot if I go in Iron Man, just me. No one telling me where the dedicated drops are. No one telling me what the best weapons are. No one telling me anything. And just play it myself, try to get through everything that I can, and use my own experience and my own knowledge to create content. What that will do for me is a lot of things. First, it will make my content original and not influenced by anybody else. And so a lot of other creators might be having best strategies that might overlap with mine, right? Let's say, oh, your Mo's build looks just like Moxie's, or your Mo's build looks just like Killer Six's, or maybe your Vex build looks a lot like Jolt's dude's. Like, you just took Jolt's dude's builds, and I will have plausible deniability, where it's not Jolt's dude's video because I haven't looked at any of those videos. And if we came up with the same build with the character that we share playing, well, then great minds might think alike, hopefully, right? If I can get there, if I can get to that point. That way I can actually have builds that are representative of me, right? Of me. Nobody else, no one else telling me how to play it. No one else telling me the secrets of, oh, by the way, if you rock the Red Fang, you don't have to worry at all about the crystals phase in the Guardian Takedown. I want to come up with that stuff myself. That way, when I do it, I feel like Stephen Hawking rather than I feel like, you know, just another Killer 6 viewer.
I cannot break through that.
You guys can let me know in the comment section what you guys think about that. Are you considering jumping into Borderlands 4 without absorbing much content at all, and trying to just find everything yourself and find your own synergies and your own gear and all that stuff? Or are you going in with the understanding that there is going to be a mountain of content and be a lot, and if you're someone who plays Borderlands, that content is enjoyable, right? You're in that world. You never thought of that, or you never got that, or there's all these interactions and stuff that you haven't thought of. You know, getting a rush of that information feels good, but getting that same information, and maybe even never getting all the same information, but getting that same information yourself is like getting that same feeling, but it's like drip fed, drip, 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 and you're slowly putting together this build, drip, just drip by drip into the bucket, and eventually you have this full bucket with all this knowledge and all this gear, and that's my bucket. That's my bucket of water. There's not a single drip in there. That was, you know, Spartan Game Zone telling me how to maximize damage with a melee build. You know, it's all me. And I'm pretty excited at that possibility. Will I be able to pull it off? It's really hard because my feed's going to be cluttered with Borderlands stuff. But if I don't click it, then hopefully it won't be as filled. Do I want to go around unsubscribing to all my Borderlands YouTubers? No. Definitely don't want to be doing that. But come September 12th, I'm going to be having to make a decision. Do I play the game slowly and try to do all my own thing? Or do I take in a bunch of content and strategy from other gamers online? Now, where do I want to fall? It's a serious question. Right now, I'm leaning on don't look up anything. But I really like I really like watching the videos of some of my favorite Borderlands YouTubers. Like Spartan Game Zone has been putting out banger after banger after banger for Borderlands 3. And even though I'm playing Flak, I still like to enjoy, you know, what SVG has to say about, you know, like when he says something like the best roll on the fish slap is triple link rolls or double link rolls, whatever, you know, That's a bit of strategy that, you know, I no longer get to experience on my own. But was I ever going to in the first place? I don't know. The real question is what I'm trying to avoid is what happened to me in Borderlands 3 a lot of it, was that I knew what the best weapons were. I knew what I was looking for, where they were, in the very beginning of my most playthrough. And what ended up happening was I kind of got rushed into the very end of the end game pretty early on. Level 50, I had my crossroads on my most. I had a crossroads in Alayuta, and I was rinsing Grave Ward very early. And what ended up happening was a lot of the legendary loot that I had never even shot, never even tried it, never even gave it a chance. I knew wasn't better than what I was using. I knew it because, well, one of these other gamers that's playing this game all day would have figured it out. And they're all saying Crossroads is the best. The Cutsman's the best. The Crossroads is the best. All this stuff. So that's what I'm looking for. If I don't see it, I don't take it. I don't want to do that. Next Borderlands, what I want to do is I want to grab every piece of gear, try it out, figure out what's going on with it, and make my own builds based on the collection of knowledge that I obtained from trying out all these different kinds of builds. If I experience a gun and say this gun, when I crit, it does shock explosive damage. If I can get a character that automatically crits like Flak, well, then that weapon will be better on him. It's just like a very foundational, basic way to play the game. But in a way that makes sense to me. Go out there and what that'll also do is it will also get rid of the trivialization of dedicated drops for me. Dedicated drops are not trivial, or not a trivial endgame mechanic unless you are getting information online. If you are tracking the whereabouts of all the best gear online, then yes, the game is actually pretty trivial. You don't have to spend that much time boosting your character up. But if you go about it on your own and you experience the game at your own pace and the guns in your own way, and you figure out what guns you like along the way without consulting the internet, then I think you can be really maybe dipping your toes into a really special river of amazing Borderlands entertainment. Like with the way the game, everyone always likes to talk about how different games are intended to be played, the way the games are meant to be played and all this stuff. I think that is the way this game is meant to be played. You find your own loot, you search out your own dedicated drops, and you don't go online to an by artificial means to figure out where stuff is. That's just me. But there's a huge audience for that kind of content. A huge audience because everybody wants to play Borderlands endgame and have fun with it and be strong and be powerful. And the last thing you want to do is spend weeks at a time trying to figure out what gun could possibly work and not knowing where to find, and not even knowing where to start. I want to, have a from scratch Borderlands experience where I don't look up everything online, right? I wasn't there for Borderlands 2 on launch. Okay. I wasn't there for a lot of it. But what I was there for was Borderlands 3 on launch, and instead of letting this game become a game where I do everything myself, I absorbed a lot of content, and I got a lot of my knowledge and information that way, and still have a lot of information that way. Borderlands 4, I kind of want to have a no assistance run, an Iron Man run, with all 4 characters all the way through the end game, and then maybe start dabbling. But the builds have got to come from me. Now I can take a build online, and I do this all the time, where there's not that much variety, right? So if you, that's with the new Borderlands 4 game, there's gonna be a lot more variety, it seems like. But if you take, let's say, Borderlands 3 character, and you go online and look up best builds, the skill difference between what a best build would be and what you could build is not gonna be that different. But the downside of looking at that best build is that every time you spec out that way, you're going to have it kind of in the back of your mind, like, you know, this was from somebody else. And even if you tweak certain points and you can say, oh, this is my own variation, realistically, it was never yours to start, right? That was somebody else's ideas. But if you come to those same conclusions, there's still not a rock right here. You come to those same conclusions on your own. And it just so happens that when you click on best builds and you've been doing that build for the last 2 years, is that really somebody else's build or is that your own build? Realistically, if you don't, even if you have all matching gear and skills as one of the biggest Borderlands 4 build guide online. Let's say Joltstude posts the ultimate Vex guide. Let's just say your build and your skills are the exact same as his. Is that his build? Or is that your build? And online, sure, that build could be his build because he posted it first. That's his build. But in my own experience, in my own game, that's my build. Because I didn't look up someone else to find it. I kind of want that almost the ease of mind, right? That I had no guilty feelings at all. No guilty feelings. I want to find all my own dedicated drops and all that. But I'm not entirely set on it because I haven't played the game yet. And when a lot of my peers or a lot of people online, right, so I'm worried about is everyone's going to be sprinting through Borderlands 4, right? Especially content creators. Why? Because it is a race. It is a race to post builds. It's a race to post dedicated drop locations and farming techniques. It's a race for everything. And so there's just so much to absorb that if everyone else in the scene is using these tools, I'm gonna fall pretty far behind. But if I don't care about falling behind, then it doesn't really matter, right? Because realistically, is this channel going to compete with a Joltstude, an Epic NNG, a Killer 6, or anything like that as far as views when it comes to, you know, how fast can we get to every legendary weapon and find every single location and posted special effects, posted the best farming methods and all this stuff. These guys are playing Borderlands all day. Like, they're going to be getting to it way, way before me, right? These full-time streamers and YouTubers and all this stuff. That puts me at a major disadvantage if I want to make that style of video. Instead, why don't I just play at my own pace, talk about Borderlands the way I want to talk about Borderlands, talk about stuff that's important to me while I'm playing, and people that want to watch, they have a little bit of a more, I don't want to say pure, but a little bit more of an Iron Man experience. Even if they live vicariously through my channel, they'll know that this is a channel where it's all coming from the dome piece, right? It's all coming from right here, and it's not coming from somebody else. And that's important to me. All right, we're at 15 minutes. We're gonna do a few more runs, and then we're gonna call this a video. We got a lot of Eridium, and you know what? It doesn't take too much time if you just, you know, rant into a microphone about what you want from Borderlands, what you think about Borderlands, what your hopes are for the future, what your plans are for the future. You can get through a video like this pretty quickly and just farm up a better Eridium. That way I can have at least a nice nest egg, a nice, you know, 17, 18K nest egg of Eridium to use however I want in the future, right? It's a pretty big deal to me.
I cannot break through that.
Now there's another side of this, that this strategy what I'm doing right here, I probably would have never ever found this out on my own. The idea of adding elements to your melee strikes to get more Eridium out of these purple piles. You kidding me? I would have never have thought of that. But now I would. You know what I'm saying? Because I got that from somebody else. I have a baseline of knowledge. But I might never be able to do the most efficient farming methods because I won't discover the most efficient farming methods. I'll come up with some, but I won't have the most efficient every time. Because you know what? There's a reason why the most efficient farming methods get lots of views on YouTube, and that's because they can be hard to intuitively figure out. You go to a video to find out those kinds of things because they're a little bit more difficult to do. All right, so we're gonna call it here. We're at 59 minutes and 50 seconds. So by the time we do the outro, we'll be at about an hour. After 1 hour of farming Eridium, we got about 15,500 Eridium. Not so bad. If we did it for another hour, it'd be about 30,000. Another hour, about 45,000. So you can get about 15,000 Eridium per hour doing it this way. So it's gonna be. That's a really, really, really nice way to farm Eridium. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit the like button. Subscribe to see more videos like this one. In the next video, we're going to be going a little bit more combat heavy. I think we might be farming for some more no pew-pews, heading to Joey's mansion. I really want to get myself a corrosive no pew-pew so I can get some COV weaponry up and running. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.